Talking with the experts.
Tressa Yonekawa Bundren explains the 8 keys to becoming and growing phenomenal leadership at every level in episode 322.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too. I've worked with leadership for over 25 years now and compliance and different things. And I think that so many people feel like in order to progress, and it is true in a lot of places, in order to make more money, in order to have the things you want to have, that leadership is something that you just move up through, or because of attrition, you found yourself as a leader. But how many people actually come into the game saying, I want to lead people. I want to guide, I want to steward, I want to be, I want to be a servant leader. I want to help people understand themselves, each other, and our systems better so that we get better outcomes. I think that we bypass all that in order to achieve what we consider to be success. And social media has made it better and worse. But I think that when we see people with success, we have an image of what that is. And I feel very grateful that we're now coming to a time when I'm seeing more, I want to be like girl moss instead of girl boss.
Welcome to Talking with the Experts. This is where we discuss great ideas to take your business to the next level. How do we know these ideas work? Well, it's because we're talking with business owners who are using these ideas. Business owners who have years of experience and expertise. All things business by business owners for business owners. And now, here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And talking about YouTube, when you head over to the channel, please click on the subscribe button so that you know when the next videos are uploaded. I have a very special guest today, Tressa Yonekawa Bundren. And we're going to be talking about how we can use our authentic self to become great leaders. Now, Tressa is an inclusive leadership and healthy culture strategist. Her university degrees and interests have led to over 25 years specialising in neuro-cognitive leadership behaviour and connection skills for critical leadership dynamics and high-stakes business mediation. She is a medical staffing corporation founder and consultancy co-founder, mum, an older child foster adoption advocate, autism services specialist, and international author. What changes in the world when we learn to connect without fear of ourselves or each other? Good question. Welcome, Tressa, and thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, Rose, thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure after following you and just looking at the body of work that you've put out for all of us. I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation and to know you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. So tell me how we can use neurocognitive communication in hand with leadership and teamwork.
That is a great question. One of the things that I think is really important is that we understand that neurocognitive is
to bring us into a place of being able to have responses, reactions, all of those things. And so when we can use the tools to bring ourselves into presence, to respond, to connect, to use vulnerability and right action and all of those things, and we'll be talking about those today, when we can use all of those things to bring ourselves into a place of deeper connection, understanding and wisdom, authentic presence with ourselves and with each other, the possibilities and potential of what we can create and what we can create together are unlimited.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no good trying to be a leader if you're giving a false front.
So much so. And yet so many of us have been taught, educated, marketed to in ways that take us away from ourselves and project us out trying to get something to make us feel like we're worthy or that we belong. And so my work in the world right now is to create inclusive leadership and teams so that we can have authentic belonging, and that we're not really having to wrestle anymore with cultures that don't honor our differences and don't honor how the collective brings in so much everything that we need when we respect and honor ourselves and each other. So much, I think, so much harm comes from our own fear. And we're taught very early to fear a lot of different things and a lot of different people.
Yeah, I know fear's a big factor when you're leading a team. Fear of yourself, fear of the unknown, fear, will you be liked by the team members? Will you like the team members? Especially if you're coming in cold from, another organization perhaps, or, you've been the team member and now you're the leader of that team. Do you have to change to become the leader, or do you just stay yourself? And so there's a lot of fear around that. And I think it prevents a lot of people from, being true to themselves and being true to the team.
Absolutely. And, it's very hard because research has shown us that you'll get the raises and you'll get the promotions, whether or not you do the job the best, if you are likable. So when we are projecting outside of ourselves, when we're trying to be something other or liked, there are very real consequences to being likable, or what we have societally determined is likable. And to me, it makes sense. And it's also very scary that we have those boundaries in place, because there's so much creativity and vision and brilliance really in people across the likability spectrum. So how do we understand as leaders, as HR people, as educators, as parents, as top leadership, how do we understand how to work through our own self-worth issues so that we're not projecting our image of perfection and what's okay on other people to have to manage? And that really comes from this work, right? That really comes from this personal work of understanding our own self-worth. It comes from those, what we call soft skills, which I believe are the hardest skills to understand in being human and in business.
Yeah, it's a bit like a marriage, really, isn't it? I mean, so whilst you're engaged, some people are, they're all together, and as soon as the paper's signed, there seems to be some shift that, being married means something else, when it, really it's just a continuation of the engagement, but it's just a legal thing. And, it happens when people become leaders in a team. They're one way whilst they are members of the team, but as soon as they become the leader, they think that they have to change their personalities.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too. I've worked with leadership for over 25 years now, and compliance and different things. And I think that so many people feel like in order to progress, and it is true in a lot of places, in order to make more money, in order to have the things you want to have, that leadership is something that you just move up through, or because of attrition you found yourself as a leader. But how many people actually come into the game saying, I want to lead people, I want to guide, I want to steward, I want to be, I want to be a servant leader. I want to help people understand themselves, each other, and our systems better so that we get better outcomes. I think that we bypass all that in order to achieve what we consider to be success. And social media has made it better and worse. But I think that when we see people with success, we have an image of what that is. And I feel very grateful that we're now coming to a time when I'm seeing more, I want to be like girl moss instead of girl boss. I don't want to strive so hard. I want to have a life that I'm excited to get up in the morning for. And I feel that I've heard that from so many people, from people who are quite well known, all the way through, my neighbors doing daycare, that when we don't feel that we have the self-worth, we wake up in a panic, not knowing if we're going to have the next great idea, not knowing if, we're loved or lovable, not knowing if we're going to have our jobs, not knowing if, people see us as worthy, because we don't. Now, that doesn't mean that if we see ourselves as worthy, that we're doing an exemplary job, or that we're going to be seen that way. So the caveat is that we really have to show up and do the work. We really have to have multiple skills of understanding, of acceptance, of self-awareness, of being able to reflect and be reflected to, having the truth of vulnerability that is totally appropriate vulnerability for the situations, and what I call the art of humility, which is knowing what we do well and knowing what we need to work on or have a choice of working on or not, and knowing what we don't do well and really need to ask for help with. And I don't think that we were ever taught, I was never taught, tell me if you were ever taught to ask for help when you need it.
No, never. And I still find it really difficult to ask, but I'm getting better at it.
I am too. And you and I were talking before the show about it's taken us decades to get to the point where we can even say, I don't understand this. I need somebody who knows more about this than me. Because what I was taught was figure it out.
Yeah, that was our time.
Yeah,
I had a really harsh upbringing, and so you just didn't go and ask for help because you'd have to stand there for 8 hours while I was explaining to you, and then end up with a fist in the mouth if you didn't understand it. So
yes, and so many people who came through hard families. I think it's a curse and a gift, and the gift part of it is that we learn resilience. I hope we learn resilience, because if we don't, we're broken, and we can be broken and resilient and not healthy. We can also learn healthy resilience from having gone through that. And I think that my husband is someone who amazing, brilliant human being, had a very upper middle class, great upbringing, never a struggle, got to do everything he wanted to do. Mom was there with cookies after school, all of those things. And I will say that while he is brilliant and engaging, he's also quite soft and has very little resilience. And he wouldn't mind me saying that because we've had this conversation. But and that's not true of everybody who's had that background. But I think that there is a place for us when we have had trauma, I'll call it trauma, hard times, to have some reassurance that there is some magic in that for us too.
Absolutely. Now, there are, according to what I'm reading in front of me, 8 consistent behaviour traits and 1 overall significant ability that has emerged as the most important aspects of being a leader. So what are they?
Yes, I will tell you. And we, my colleague, Laura Mansfield, and I have a book coming out at the end of this year about this, because we both have seen in over 25 years of work each that these have been consistently the keys to being phenomenal leaders. And when we use these keys to be leaders, we've worked with it in the corporate section. But when we use these keys, they also overflow to our personal lives. And when that happens, everything gets better. So very often I'm asked to help not just with corporate culture and executive coaching, but those people then will ask me to help with their families and their partners, because these things are applicable to our life, our love, and our work. So one is integrity. And integrity can be subjective until we start to ask the question, what's in the highest good of all involved here? And it doesn't matter if we're talking about ourselves, you and I, or you leading 50,000 people. What's in the highest good of all involved tends to give us a pretty immediate and clear picture of what needs to be done. And then we can make choices within that about how to apply our knowledge base and our visionary problem solving and the outcomes that we're looking for. But if we can keep in mind in integrity and hold that integrity, we become people that other people trust. And so integrity leads to trust. And trust builds over time. And you know, in your life, we all know, all of us who are listening, we've had times when we have broken people's trust, or trust has been broken with us, and it's not an immediate fix. You can come back the next day in full integrity, and people still don't have that trust built up with you. It is incremental over time. So if we can come in with integrity, we can show up that way, we can build trust. So those are 2 of them, integrity and trust. Appropriate vulnerability is another one. So when we can, like you and I were just talking about, say, I don't know the answer. I need some help. Please give me your opinions. Please let me know what you see happening here, with the right people and in the right times. And this vulnerability is part of our integrity. It's saying, I don't know everything. I know I don't know everything. I'm not always going to ask you what to do. But in this instance, or in these instances, I could use some support. And whether that be in my work with inclusion and equity, diversity, where sometimes leaders just honestly don't know how to lead an inclusive environment. And when they say that, when they can approach that within themselves and just get very real with their teams, they garner the respect of the people in the room. And it's a beautiful thing to see happen.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and inclusiveness is, if you don't know how to do that, ask, because each person's idea of inclusiveness is different.
Right. And when we're asking the right people, the people that have been excluded for so long know a lot about inclusivity, because we've made them learn all about exclusivity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So yeah. And on top of that then comes right action. So we put integrity, vulnerability, and right action together, and we are a more human, more ethical leader. So those three. When we can also add inclusion, which is a skill. Inclusion isn't something we were taught. We were taught how to put people in boxes, how to label people, so that we had some control of our world and that we could understand things better. And so if we were taught wrong how to place those labels and where, and who to put in those boxes, and so many of us were taught very wrong how to do that, then we do have to learn how to be inclusive. And thank you for addressing that. It's something we need to learn.
It is something we need to learn, and we need to become less judgmental. I mean, because everyone's different. It doesn't matter, black, brown, yellow, brindle, doesn't matter. The tall,
Yeah.
short, large sized, small sized, it doesn't matter. We're all the same. We all bleed red blood. And unless you're from Mars, and you might be green, but I don't know yet. We haven't found a Martian yet.
That we know of.
And a lot of us were brought up not to include those people. It's only people that looked like us and talked like us were, the people that we should be associating with. And to me, that's just so wrong. And
really, we miss out on so much from each other, all of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the human to human connection, to me, really solves for a lot of those boxes and labels. When we can just have presence with each other, I think we all find and feel and notice that it's our own fear that blocks us from this amazing connection and the truth of us, which is love. As soft as that sounds, the truth of us is just pure love beyond romantic love. We sometimes get confused with attraction and with all of those things and having it be only romantic, but there's so much more than that.
It is.
When
absolutely.
Yeah.
And before you can love others, you need to love yourself too. I think that's always
and
good.
This is the work. And so many of us are caregivers, and so we practice caring for others so that the spotlight doesn't have to be on us, so that we don't have to deal with us. If we can always be taking care of others, and I think we see that in codependent relationships, and oftentimes in leadership, that if I'm constantly resourcing for my team, if I'm constantly, over engaging, overdoing, and working really hard for my team, we become more of a martyr than a leader. But when we have an equivocal understanding that we're here for each other, we're here for this bigger purpose, and we're here to live this mission. If we all understand and appreciate and believe in the mission, that's half the battle. We've pretty much got it made. Now we just need to understand how to get there. But so often as leaders, we don't live the mission. We don't demonstrate the values that we are saying that we bring in and that we want other people to live. I think it's the same with parenting. Do as I say, not as I do. That's a hard lesson for parents to learn to flip that.
Yes.
And speaking of parenting and leading, patience and allowing is the next one. And this is hard for those of us who want results right now. We haven't learned how to be patient because patience takes time, and we've learned that time decreases our agility and increases our exposure to failure. So if we can understand patience and allowing as being really a superpower, and it can happen quite quickly, it doesn't have to be days or hours or even minutes. Patience and allowing is opening up so that we can have a real conversation, so that we can have hard conversations and allow for people's feelings, allow for people's whole selves to be brought to work and life.
Absolutely.
And the next is active listening. So, less than 10% of connection communication is actually words. The other 90% is everything else. So imagine what we lose in a text. And I don't know if you've ever misunderstood someone in a text.
Oh, yes, quite often. And they've misunderstood me. I know what I'm saying, and I've put the emphasis on the right words, but when they've read it, it's so misunderstood because they can't hear my tone. They can't see my face. So, yeah, it's really hard.
It's really hard. And so the clarity and quality of our communication has to up level so that we can have this active listening, even when we are in words only. And we're going to read those words through all of our own filters, unless we have a common language and a common way of interpreting these things. And if we don't establish that, if we don't say, hey, when I send you an email, it's about this and in this tone, or however it's going to help us understand each other. So the person on the receiving side doesn't have misperceptions and therefore form opinions and other lenses that are going to be maybe not helpful.
Yes,
so
it's a really good thing to learn.
Really good thing, and really difficult because we don't often take the time. We don't often have the patience. We shoot things off to people with our understanding. And so this place of active listening comes in very handy in this culture of ours that is on Zoom, where I might be talking to nobody. People might just have photos or names up or something like that. How do we get across then in voice only? How do we get across in word only? And when we get the thrill of each other in person, it's so much easier and also more risky because now we're having a concept of each other in real time, in whole self. And again, we're seeing and reading each other through our lenses and our experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we must be up to number 6 now.
Yeah, that was 6. We have integrity, vulnerability, right action, inclusion, patience and allowing, and active listening. And so the last 2, trust and humility. And we've already talked a little bit about both of those. So those 8 things lead to belonging from an ideal foundation of real connection.
Yeah, and that's a human thing anyway, isn't it? We all want to belong to something or to someone. So, all of those previous things that lead to the belonging are very important.
They are. And, we get more out of ourselves and each other, especially as leaders, when we can belong to ourselves first, and then we can belong together. Whether that be as a mission, as a family, as whatever we're coming together for, even if it's just to be in the world together. And that's really where I get excited, that if we can do these things, if we can work on these 8 really simple, like just remember that these are a part of us already and exercise them more so that we can create the change, so that we can be the change, so that we can literally change the world together. How exciting is it that we hold that power, and we always have?
Yeah, well, I want to be the change that is the change.
And what does that mean to you?
Oh, I think the world could do with a lot more patience and love and commitment and integrity and all of the things that you spoke of. I think the world would be so much better if we practiced, everyone practiced it every single day. And gratefulness. I mean, just be grateful that, you woke up this morning, and be grateful that, the sun's shining, and be grateful that there's not bombs falling on your house, or, stuff like that. Just the little things like
Oh my
the bee
gosh.
outside your window, or the bird, or whatever. Gratefulness is such a great practice, and, we should all practice it daily.
Thank you so much for talking about it. I know here in the States, some of the people that I follow talk a lot about gratitude, and raising your vibration, and things that really help us to be fully present and here and fully living our lives. Like David Meltzer is one that comes to mind right away. He's I call him a fire hose of spiritual business, because he's constantly talking about that. What do we have if we don't have gratitude?
Mm.
I think it's so powerful. And who are the people on your side of the world who you follow that talk about gratitude
There's
and
quite a few
how to do this
people.
well?
I've just come into. They've just come into my circle. So, is I can't think of the names offhand. Sorry.
I know that you're one.
Having a
I
bit
know
of
that you're one.
mind blank, but yeah.
Yeah.
But so when is your book due out, Tressa?
Hopefully this winter. We don't have a specific date yet, but yeah, I'm excited to have it finally out. We've been working on it for close to 10 years now, just compiling and making sure that what we were seeing was real, that these 8 tenets really did result in the changes and outcomes that were important and that were sustainable for people. And now we have people coming back to us and saying, you did this talk 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I'm still learning from that. It's still important to us. It's still impacting our team and my family. And that, to me, that's success.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done. And have you got a title for the book yet, or is it a work in progress?
So far, it's a work in progress, but it really is focused on, being a listening leader. So we'll see what comes of it with our brilliant team who's helping us put it together.
Absolutely perfect. Tressa, where can people find you if they'd like to know more or to work with you?
They can find me at thetaprootway.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, Tressa Yonekawa Bundren. Would love to connect. Please don't just follow me. Please connect with me. I definitely want to know more about other people too. That's one of the most exciting parts of my life. And yeah, I'm excited to know you, Rose, and to know and understand better the people who are in your circle as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for being here. Tressa, have you got any last words of wisdom or a quote or something that you'd like to share?
Yeah, not words, more of a question. And it is the question that I always add as part of my bio, that, what changes can we create, every one of us, if we learn the keys to connect with ourselves and each other with more compassion and less fear.
Absolutely, yes. I think that is sorely needed in the world. More compassion and less fear of the unknown. Less fear of your neighbour, less fear in general.
Absolutely, Rose.
Tressa, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope we can talk again later on in the year.
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye for now.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.